There's another pocket in my pocket, and my phone was getting caught on.
Hi there and welcome to From Ideas to Results. I'm joined by Chris, who's part of our data and our paid performance team here at Sleeping Giant Media, and we are diving into the big topics that have been happening, particularly in the world of data and tracking. Start off with server side. For those people who are kind of new to what server side tracking means, can you just give us a bit of an overview of what that is and I guess why it's important?
Generally, when the marketing tags are sending information over to Google or Facebook or whichever platform it is, they are sending it via their own servers. What server side does is it essentially creates a part of your website that is sending that information, and as a result what it means is the browsers will treat it as a first party script. It won't be blocked by a lot of the ad blockers. When it's dropping things like cookies, they're being dropped as truly first party.
So server side is different to what would be what's the alternative to this?
The alternative is that you would just use the marketing pixel itself. Let's say you have Google Tag Manager and it would be googletagmanager.com that is sending that information. Google Ads, it would be the ad.syndicate services that is sending that, or double click. And so instead of it being one of those recognized advertising URLs that is your transport URL, how that is being passed, it would be your own domain. So it might be something like analytics.sleepinggiantmedia or sgt@sleepinggiantmedia. So when that is happening in the browser, everything about it is your own site.
And that avoids potentially it not being fired, because some sites will look to block GTM and things like that.
As well as additional performance improvements.
Yeah.
So you can imagine these services which are not charging anything for using them, they will have some limitations in how well they perform, working in all sorts of different places. This is something dedicated to you. So you get significant improvements in performance as well.
Often if you get better accuracy, there's more legwork to start with and more technical capabilities to do that. Is that the same in this situation?
Yes. Yeah. So to a degree, there's elements of it that are fairly complicated. You don't have to get into those super complicated areas. The general setup, as long as you have somebody that has access to your hosting, you can update the DNS records. The actual setup of server-side itself includes a couple of relatively complicated bits and is improved by knowing things like command line instructions that can make sure that you get certain things like reserved IPs and setting up load balancers and things like that all sound technical and complicated, but really it's like rocket science. Once you know how to do it, it's really easy. It's super important. So all of the platforms now say server-side will improve things. If you are an advertiser who's spending more than a few £1,000s a month, you really should be using it, because you're losing out on enough that would make it absolutely worthwhile. Facebook for the last 2 years have been saying you just have to have it at whatever level. They need it. It sends so many additional signals to those platforms and makes the performance significantly better.
Point number 2, so first party data workflows and CRM limited clients. What's that?
If you happen to be working with one of the big CRMs, if you're working on HubSpot or Salesforce, they have great integrations. Build your database, you work with your standard processes for building your database, and then you click a few buttons and connect it with whichever platform you want to, and it's relatively easy. There are some things you need to make sure you get right, but there are also a lot of businesses that aren't on those platforms. They're building up their database in some other system. We are building some ways where you can better integrate in highly secure manners. So it's not, can you please send us an email with all these in, which has obvious risks, but it's processes for converting to SHA-256 at the earliest opportunity, uploading directly into something like Cloud Workspace to cloud storage that can then be passed through into BigQuery and back into those systems, whether it's Google Ads or Microsoft or Facebook. At all stages is in its most secure place.
And I guess any first steps that people could be doing to take that? Is that something that they just have to investigate?
First party in general, your first step is just remember to be getting consent, because you shouldn't be using that data unless you've told people at the point of collection, we may use this for various reasons. And always the best legal basis to be doing anything is consent, both from a trust of user point of view, but also just compliance is the best way of doing things. So remembering to ask for consent when you're collecting those databases, and then starting to think about how you might want to segment those for advertising.
And AI visibility, massive topic. AI is obviously sort of rolled out. You see AI mode, you've got AI overviews, you've got ChatGPT, all of which are now potentially driving traffic to people. And what we're seeing is the challenge that clients are coming up with, so say, well, where am I ranking?
Actually, a lot of that messy middle where people are doing their research, their thinking, their consideration, that isn't happening on websites in a way that it used to. Those citations and people doing their research in ChatGPT or all those different answer engines is meaning that less people need to visit sites. So you might look at your AI traffic and say, oh, 0.6 of my traffic comes from GPT or Claude or Perplexity, that isn't really the true value of AI. So if you're just using GA4 or your web analytics to say how important is AI for me, you're missing something important.
And actually, if you're straight away wondering what do you do, well, we've actually covered this topic in our recent marketing leadership series as well. It's exploring how marketers will need to completely change the way that they've approached everything historically as well. So do check out that content. Diving into specifically AI visibility, you've been evaluating tools, and we've looked at some and sort of making our selection of how we kind of go about that. What are the key players if you are trying to get a better understanding of that sort of visibility aspect of AI?
So there are a lot of tools and a lot of levels to this as well. So there are a few tools that are fairly basic. You can enter some prompts and it will go to whichever platform you want, have a look at where you're appearing in there. Are you cited? Where do you sit within that citation? What content is appearing? Which competitors are there as well? Most of the tools that do this will do that, but they range up to some quite impressive ones at the top. So if we start at the lower end, how often am I visible? Who else is appearing there? What kind of content is there? The next level up is looking at within that content, are there particular elements of that content that are more effective or less effective than others? Are there particular types of users that might be searching that would see that? So some of them will allow you to create personas. And so it's not just what is the best way to clean my car, it's what is the best way to clean my car written by somebody who is a commuter, a family, etc. And all of these sorts of things will change the personalization of it. And then the next level up is AI monitoring that actually have some understanding of what is happening on those platforms. Because the platforms themselves don't release that data, we don't have Trends or Google Search Console like you do for standard SEO. There are actually not that many places where you can get a true understanding of what's happening. It's partly why the monitoring in the first place is so important. Also just understanding what should I be monitoring. So you might have an idea from your SEO keywords or the kind of things that you offer. These are the prompts that people might most likely to search. And at the bottom end of the market, you'll be putting that in. Some of them will figure it out and say, we think people will search this. At the higher end, they'll be saying, for example, Profound, they have a bank of 30 million users who are producing 300 million searches a month. They are using that, which they collect through various sources, to say, we actually see what people search for. And then when they're suggesting prompts, it's based off of real data rather than an assumption of people like this research.
The tools that you've kind of evaluated, starting off at the entry level that people can kind of potentially go and look at.
So something like Tracker AI is a very good one at the bottom level. In the middle, there's something like Scrunch or Writesonic. Both have some slightly varied features within that. Writesonic actually comes from a background of AI content writing, so it has some quite interesting things around that it adds to it. Scrunch is fairly new, but has some really interesting ways of reviewing the data, and also they have an additional service which will help you to understand how you should structure your page, underlying page, so that it's ideal for LLMs to read, and then Profound at the higher end. There are some other players in the market, so you've got SEMrush and SimilarWeb, not just AI monitoring. They have some decent AI monitoring capabilities, but they also have a much wider understanding of the market overall.
Brave new world that we are entering. So I hope you found that useful. If you'd like to see more content on that topic, which is humongous, do check out the marketing leadership series on our website and our socials. It's a big topic that we'll be talking about. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.